Fresh protests have flared in Bahrain despite the ruling monarchy's declaration that all forms of public demonstrations are now banned. In the latest clashes, police and troops fired rubber bullets and tear gas at demonstrators. The police response was immediate, with hundreds of raids on homes of suspected protesters and dozens of arrests. We're now on the crisis in Bahrain with Khalil Almarzooq, I should say, who's a leading figure of Wefaq, Bahrain's largest opposition party. Thank you for being with us on the line. It's still early. Why do you think the government's bans on protest, what the bans will achieve, I should say?
The government is just making itself too busy discussing whether this is part of the Arab Spring or not part of the Arab Spring, and doesn't want to show any symptoms of or signals of Arab Spring, which is the mass demonstration. And they think that by banning protest from the streets, this is the way forward, just to isolate Bahrain from what's happening in the whole region. This is not true. Historically, for 90 years, Bahrainis wanting to have participation in the political system, to have legislative authority that's fully represented by the people. So the policy making is part of the people decision, not a ruling family. An independent judicial authority to provide justice and inclusive security. This has been failure to the political system in Bahrain, the elite system in Bahrain. They confiscated all the authorities to themselves. The country is run by a single family, a minority within the community. It's not sectarian. It's related to rulers who want to dominate everything. Lots of people from Sunni community and the Shia community are frustrated with this regime, because an absolute rule is being there for decades now, and the people peacefully wanting to change this political system, but the resistance because of the oil in the 70s, because of the alliances with the GCC countries, because with the alliances with the international community, and the Arab Spring, when it is erupted in Tunisia and Egypt, this creates some sort of inspiration to the Bahraini people, but have not created a new demand for the Bahraini people. The demands were there 100 years ago, 90 years ago specifically. So this is the theme, that they want to kill this theme, that this is part of the Arab Spring or not part of the Arab Spring.
Well, unlike a lot of the countries that were part of the Arab Spring, Tunisia, Egypt, not so much coverage we're seeing on Bahrain. Nevertheless, there are reports of continuing mass arrests and torture. Tell us, how widespread is this now, months, I might add, after the government itself admitted and promised to put a halt to them?
During last year, February and March, there are massive protests of hundreds of thousands. And after the martial law being imposed in Bahrain on 15th March last year, the security and the army thought, with the engagement of GCC troops, they thought they will kill this protest. On 9 March this year, lots of protesters, massive protesters, came to the street with hundreds of thousands. On 18th March, hundreds of thousands. And due to summer and Ramadan season, you might not see the hundreds of thousands, but I can assure you that after Ramadan, there will be hundreds of thousands getting to the street, despite of all of this. This is happening not because the people want to entertain themselves in the streets, because there are legitimate demands that they want to be the power, the source of power in all these authorities in Bahrain, the executive power, the legislative power, and security power, judicial power, not because they want to entertain themselves with democracy models, but they want to have security. They want to have justice.
You say hundreds of thousands out on the streets in the country, yet we hear very little about it. I just want to make sure we touch on this. Bahrain, of course, a strong backer of the rebellion in Syria, which we hear about every day. At home in the country, enthusiasm, obviously, for democracy seems to be non-existent, at least from what you're telling us. Why such an apparent double standard, and why is no one calling them out?
There is no such in all GCC countries. There are no such promotion to democracy anywhere. If they are supporting the cause in Syria, they are not supporting the Syrian people, and the Syrian people should understand this. They are not supporting the democracy in Syria. They are just part of a political game within the region. I'm not saying that the Syrian people have no real cause. I'm not saying that the Syrian people have no real cause for democracy and we don't support them. Definitely we support them. Definitely we are against the killing of the Syrian people. But never trust the GCC countries, governments and authorities that are for the democracy in Syria. For the Syrian people. They are playing a game. If they want to implement human rights and democracy, they should implement it first in their countries. Then they should claim that they are supporting it.
Mr. Almarzooq, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your comments for us on the line. Khalil Almarzooq, leading figure of Wefaq, Bahrain's largest opposition party. Thanks for that.
My pleasure.